Hello, this is Mark, and I'm going to show you in this video three formulas that seem to do the same thing, but they have very specific uses that can really help you out. The formulas are going to be sum, subtotal, and a new one called aggregate, and that one came out in Excel 2016. So looking at this simple database that I have here in Excel, I have a couple of fields. I have item, description, quantity, price, and extended price, and the only thing extended price is, is quantity times price. It's pretty easy. So what you want to do is I want to get the sum of everything that's been sold. That's actually pretty simple. You can come down here, and for a contiguous area that has numbers, you don't even have to type equals sum. You can actually press the Alt key and the equal sign, and it does it automatically for you. So there is my sum. Pretty easy. You guys know how to use that. I'm just going to label it here, right there, sum. I'll give you one quick trick about sum, in that you can use one sum function to sum up different numbers that are not in the same area. So if I wanted to sum up 800 and the 741, you could use the plus sign. But you could also do this, and it's the same thing. Sum, open parentheses, you click on E3, you can do a comma, and then you can click on the 7140. Close the parentheses, and you have the sum. Just a quick little trick, different syntax. Okay, I'm going to get rid of that. That was just a little tangent. Now what we want to do is let's look at subtotal and what subtotal does. I'm going to go ahead and put subtotal right here so we know what the formula is. I'm going to go equals subtotal, open parentheses. So the subtotal can do all of these. Average, count, count A. Count A counts the number of non-blank spaces in a range. Max, min, product, standard deviation of a sample, standard deviation of a population, and the sum. We're going to use the sum. But, oh, you also have the variance of a sample and the variance of a population. But notice how you have 101, and then it's average. 102 is going to be count. 103, it's the same thing, but with a 100 in front of it. What does that mean? Well, the difference is that average, or let's just do sum. Sum will take the sum exactly like the sum function. But usually when you use subtotal, you want to use 109, because that means the subtotal will take the sum, but it will ignore hidden rows. So you can hide a row and you will get the correct sum. The sum function will not do that, and I'll show you that in a little bit. So I'm going to use 109. I'm going to double click, press a comma, and just select this range. So we should get the exact same number, 90140. Now what happens if I hide the 800? Not delete, but just hide it. Sum is going to give me the true sum, regardless of the status of the row visibility, whereas now subtotal, because I used 109, will give me the subtotal of just the ones that are visible. This will work if you auto filter or you manually hide items. The other benefit that a subtotal has is that it will ignore other subtotals. So if I have another subtotal that will include this subtotal, it will not double count. It will only do the 30, the 7140, and the 901. It won't ignore the sum, but it will ignore other subtotals. So if you have a bunch of sums that you have down a column, it may be easier to use subtotal because the one at the bottom can just do everything above it, and it'll skip all of the other ones. Okay? So that is subtotal. I'm going to go ahead, I'm going to unhide this. And now we're going to use aggregate, which basically means sum. But it is the big brother of subtotal in that it has more intelligence. So you do aggregate, open parentheses, almost the same thing as subtotal, right? Average count, count A, but it does have a couple more options. Remember how we had the variance of a population, variance of a sample? We can also find the median, the mode, large, which is the largest value, small, which is the smallest value. I'm sorry, I made a mistake. Large is the largest nth value. So if you want the fifth largest, you can get that. Same thing for small. If I want the third smallest, you can get that one. You can do percentile, quartile, you can do all of the stuff that subtotal cannot do. So off the bat, you have more options there. We're going to stick with sum. Now watch what's going to happen. You hit a comma, and you have a lot more options. In the subtotal, we had 9 just for the sum, and we had 109 to ignore hidden rows. But look what you can do here. I can ignore other subtotals and other aggregates if I use a 0. I can ignore hidden rows, subtotals and aggregates. I can ignore values, subtotals and aggregates, or even hidden rows, error values, subtotals and aggregates. Like every single combination. You can ignore nothing. You can basically see what's going on. So you have more options on what you want to ignore. So we're going to ignore hidden rows, error values, other subtotals, and other aggregates. Press a comma, and now what am I going to add up? I'm going to add up all of this from E3 to E5, close the parentheses, and we have 90140. So with the raw data set, sum, subtotal, and aggregate are exactly the same. Now once I start to hide stuff, sum is going to be it's not incorrect, but it doesn't show the sum of the visible cells, but these two will show the sum of just the visible cells. So right now you can see that subtotal and aggregate are better than sum, but these two, what's the difference between these two? Well, subtotal won't, I'm going to unhide this, subtotal will not ignore errors. So let's suppose I have a new sales guy and he's not the brightest guy on the planet, and instead of the number 4 he types in 4. He's an Excel newbie, he doesn't know what's going on. He presses enter, look at what happened. The sum automatically gives me an error, whether it's hidden or not, it doesn't matter. Sum is going to give me an error because there's an error in there. Subtotal will also give me an error because subtotal, the only thing 109 says is the only thing 109 basically says is ignore hidden rows. It doesn't say anything about errors, but aggregate does ignore the hidden rows and the errors and other aggregates and other subtotals. So this is really the most powerful one of the three. This came out, I believe, in Excel 2010 and later. So if you have Excel 2007, you're not going to have it. You're going to get an error if you distribute it to other people who don't have that current version. And that is about it. Go ahead, play around with it. Sum, subtotal, and aggregate. I hope you can use it. And if you want more good Excel goodies, go ahead and look at either my Teachable class or all the Excel lessons I have in ebooks. Okay, see you next lesson.